The colony ship Endurance shook violently as it dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his command chair and stared at the massive red planet filling the viewscreen. This was not New Eden, their planned destination. This was something far worse. "Report," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "Sir, we're looking at Piro 7, said Navigator Ben Taylor, his fingers flying over the controls. "It's a volcanic world. Class 9 death planet." Jake felt his stomach drop. Behind him, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. They all knew what this meant. New Eden was gone. The stellar flare that had destroyed their new home had also damaged their ship's navigation systems. They were lost, low on fuel, and carrying 2,000 colonists who had sold everything for a chance at a new life. "Life support status?" Jake asked. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker looked up from her console, her face pale. "We have maybe 6 hours of air left, sir. The recycling systems are failing. We can't make another jump." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of dying systems. Through the viewscreen, Piro 7 glowed like a coal in a fire. Even from orbit, they could see the orange glow of lava flows and the dark clouds of volcanic ash covering most of the planet. "Sir," Ben said quietly, "I'm reading surface temperatures of 200 degrees. The atmosphere is thick with sulfur compounds. This planet will kill us." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the families in the cargo holds below. Parents who had brought their children across the galaxy for a better life. Farmers who dreamed of rich soil and clean air. Engineers who wanted to build something new, all of them trusting him to keep them safe. "Not if we kill it first," Jake said. "Lisa, can we land?" Lisa studied her readings. "There's a plateau between 2 volcanoes. It's the most stable ground I can find. But sir, the heat alone will cook us alive." "Then we better figure out how not to get cooked," Jake said. "All hands prepare for emergency landing." The announcement echoed through the ship. In the passenger compartments, people grabbed their belongings and strapped themselves in. Children cried. Adults tried to look brave. Everyone knew this was not the plan. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the colony's chief botanist, held his daughter's hand as the ship shuddered around them. "Are we going to die, Daddy?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Humans are tough. We'll figure something out." In the cargo bay, maintenance worker Danny Rodriguez checked the straps on the greenhouse equipment. The prefab shelters and farming tools looked so small now. How could they possibly survive on a world that was trying to burn them alive? "Brace for impact," came Jake's voice over the intercom. The Endurance hit the plateau hard. The ship's hull groaned as it scraped across volcanic rock. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power died. But they were down, they were alive. For now, Jake was the first to step outside. The heat hit him like a physical blow, even through his protective suit. The ground beneath his feet was so hot he could feel it through his boots. The air shimmered with rising heat, and the sky was the color of old blood. "Dear God," he whispered. One by one, the colonists emerged from the ship. They moved quickly, carrying supplies and equipment to the prefab shelters that were already being assembled. The shelters were designed for normal worlds, not this hellish place. Within minutes, the outer walls were buckling from the heat. "The environmental systems are failing," Lisa reported, sweat pouring down her face. "The cooling units can't handle this temperature." Paul Stevens, the colony's civilian leader, gathered the department heads in the largest shelter. The man was a natural organizer, someone who could keep people calm in a crisis. But even he looked shaken. "We need to face facts," Paul said. "We have food for maybe 2 months, water for less, and our shelters are melting." "The air is toxic," added Dr. Walsh. "We can't breathe outside without filters, and we don't have enough filters for everyone." Rick Davis, the mining foreman, slammed his fist on the table. "So what are you saying? We just give up? Die here like cowards?" "I'm saying we need to be smart," Paul replied. "This isn't about giving up. It's about survival." Amy Thompson, one of the younger engineers, had been quiet until now. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" she said. What if we don't fight the planet? What if we work with it? Work with it? Rick laughed bitterly. Lady, this place is trying to kill us. But it's not personal, Amy continued. It's just physics, heat, pressure, chemical reactions. We're engineers. We solve problems. Lisa nodded slowly. She's right. We've been thinking like colonists. Maybe we need to think like survivors? Outside, the sound of another shelter wall collapsing echoed across the camp. People were already moving their belongings to the remaining intact buildings. Children helped carry supplies while their parents worked on repairs that everyone knew. Where temporary Danny Rodriguez emerged from under a broken cooling unit, his clothes soaked with sweat. I might have something, he called out. The waste heat exchangers from the ship, we could modify them. Modify them how? Lisa asked, instead of getting rid of heat, what if we use it? This planet has more thermal energy than we know what to. To do with maybe we can turn that into power? The idea was crazy. It was also the first hope they'd had since landing. That night, as the colonists huddled in the few remaining shelters, Jake stood outside in his protective suit. The stars were invisible through the ash clouds, but he could see the glow of lava flows in the distance. The ground beneath his feet radiated heat like a giant oven. Carol Martinez, the mining engineer, joined him outside. You know what I keep thinking about? She said. My great-grandmother used to tell stories about the old days, when humans lived in deserts and Arctic wasteland, places that should have killed them. And, Jake asked, they didn't just survive. They thrived. They built cities in the desert. They hunted whales in the ice. They turned every hostile environment into a home. Jake nodded. You think we can do that here? I think we don't have a choice, Carol said. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe. Choice makes us soft. Maybe we need to be pushed to show what we're really capable of. As if to emphasize her point, a distant volcano erupted, sending a column of fire into the dark sky. The ground shook beneath their feet. Any sane species would run from this place. But humans had never been accused of being sane. The next morning brought new challenges. 3 more shelters had failed during the night. The water recycling system was clogged with volcanic dust. The food stores were spoiling in the heat, but something else was happening too. People were adapting. The children had figured out how to move quickly across the hot ground without burning their feet. The farmers were studying the volcanic soil, wondering if it could be made fertile. The engineers were sketching plans for heat-resistant buildings. The miners were looking at the volcanic rock and seeing building materials. We're not dying, Jake realized, watching his people work. We're evolving. Lisa approached him with a rough sketch. Amy and I have been working on something. A greenhouse. Design that uses geothermal energy for cooling instead of heating. It's crazy, but it might work. Jake studied the drawings. They showed a structure that looked nothing like the prefab buildings they'd brought from Earth. This was something new. Something designed for this world. How long to build a prototype? He asked. If we cannibalize parts from the ship and work around the clock, maybe 2 weeks. Do it, Jake said, and tell everyone to start thinking like we're staying. Because the human colony on Piro 7 had begun. Not as planned, not as hoped, but as it had to be. They would learn to live with the fire, or they would die trying. But they would not give up. That was not the human way. 3 months had passed since the Endurance crashed on Piro 7. The colonists had learned to live with the constant heat and the smell of sulfur in the air. They moved quickly from shelter to shelter, always aware that the ground could burn. Through their boots if they stood still too long. Danny Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked on the modified heat exchanger. The machine hummed quietly, but instead of cooling the air, it was doing something completely different. It was capturing the planet's thermal energy and turning it into electricity. It's working, he called out to Lisa Parker, who was checking. The power readings. We're getting consistent energy output. Lisa smiled for the first time in weeks. Danny, you might have just saved us all. The breakthrough had come by accident. Danny had been trying to repair a broken cooling unit when he accidentally reversed the flow system. Instead of fighting the heat, the machine started using it. The discovery had sparked an idea that was now spreading through the colony like wildfire. Dr. Kevin Walsh stood in what would become the first greenhouse, holding a handful of volcanic soil. The ground had been cooled and treated with chemicals from their medical supplies. It was black and rich, full of minerals that had been cooked out of the planet's core. "This soil is incredible," he told Amy Thompson, who was welding support beams for the greenhouse frame. "Look at these mineral readings. Iron, magnesium, potassium, trace elements we can barely find on Earth. If we can grow anything in this, it's going to be supercharged." Amy nodded, her welding mask pushed up on her forehead. "If we can keep it cool enough." "The cooling system is our biggest challenge." The greenhouse was taking shape around them. It looked nothing like the prefab structures they had brought from Earth. This was built from salvaged ship parts, volcanic glass, and pure human creativity. The walls were thick layers of ship metal with volcanic rock insulation. The roof was a dome of fused volcanic glass that could withstand the heat while letting in light. But the real innovation was the cooling system. Instead of fighting the planet's heat, they were using it. Geothermal pipes ran deep into the ground, capturing the planet's thermal energy. This energy powered cooling units that kept the greenhouse at Earth normal temperatures. It was backward logic that somehow made perfect sense. Paul Stevens walked through the construction site, checking on the different work teams. The colony had organized itself into specialized groups out of necessity. Everyone had a job and everyone knew their survival depended on doing it well. "How's the glass production coming?" he asked Carol Martinez, who was overseeing a team of miners. "Better than expected," Carol replied, pointing to a pile of clear volcanic glass sheets. "The volcanic sand melts clean when we heat it right. We're getting glass that's stronger than anything we had on the ship." The glass-making process was another example of human adaptation. They had discovered that the volcanic sand could be melted and formed into incredibly strong glass using the planet's own heat. Children collected the sand while adults operated the furnaces. Even the elderly helped by sorting materials and checking quality. Rick Davis emerged from a tunnel entrance, covered in volcanic dust but grinning. "We've got good news from underground," he announced. "The lava tubes go for kilometers. They're cooler down there, and they're stable. We could build a whole city under this planet." The discovery of the lava tube system had been another game changer. The tubes were natural tunnels formed by ancient lava flows. They provided protection from the surface heat and created a network of underground spaces that could be turned into living areas, workshops, and storage facilities. "How cool is cooler?" Amy asked, always thinking about engineering challenges. "Maybe 150 degrees instead of 200, Rick replied. "Still hot enough to cook you, but manageable with the right equipment." In the medical bay, Dr. Susan Clark was making discoveries of her own. She had been testing the effects of the volcanic environment on the human body, expecting to find nothing but problems. Instead, she found something surprising. "The mineral content in the air is actually helping some people," she explained to Jake Morrison during his weekly health check. "The sulfur compounds are clearing up respiratory problems. The heat is helping with joint pain. It's like the planet is giving us a constant mineral spa treatment." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You're saying this death world is actually good for us?" "Parts of it, yes. Obviously, we can't breathe the air or touch the ground, but the overall environment has some unexpected benefits. The children are adapting especially well. Their bodies are learning to deal with the heat more efficiently." This was true. The colony's children had become amazingly good at living on Piro 7. They moved across the hot ground with quick, dancing steps. They could spot dangerous thermal vents from a distance. They had even learned to predict volcanic activity by watching the color of the sky. 10-year-old Alex Turner had become the unofficial leader of the children's group. He was small for his age, but incredibly smart. He had figured out how to make tools from volcanic glass and how to process sulfur crystals into useful chemicals. "Look what I made," Alex said, showing Amy a small device that looked like a thermometer. It tells us how hot the ground is without touching it. I used parts from a broken tablet and some sulfur crystals. Amy examined the device with amazement. Alex, this is brilliant. How did you figure this out? I just played with stuff until... It worked, Alex said with a shrug. The sulfur crystals change color when they get hot. So I put them in a clear tube and made a scale. The boy's invention was already being copied by other children. Soon, every work team had ground temperature sensors made from salvaged electronics and volcanic materials. The children were adapting to their new world in ways the adults couldn't imagine. The first greenhouse was nearly complete. The cooling system was running smoothly, powered by the planet's own thermal energy. The air inside was clean and cool. The treated volcanic soil was ready for planting. We're ready for the first test, Amy announced to the assembled colonists. Who wants to do the honors? Dr. Walsh stepped forward with a small container of seeds. They were tomatoes, chosen because they were hardy and grew quickly. He knelt in the rich black soil and carefully planted the first seeds that would grow on Pyrrhus 7. Now we wait, he said, standing up and brushing soil from his hands. The wait was not long. Within days, green shoots were pushing through the volcanic soil. The plants grew faster than anyone had expected. The mineral-rich soil was like rocket fuel for plant growth. The tomatoes were bigger, greener, and healthier than anything they had seen on Earth. It's working, Dr. Walsh said, his voice filled with wonder. Not only is it working, it's working better than we ever hoped. The success of the first greenhouse sparked a frenzy of construction. Teams began building additional greenhouses, each one incorporating lessons learned from the first. Some were designed for different types of crops. Others were built to serve as workshops or living spaces. The colony was transforming. What had started as a desperate survival mission was becoming something more. They were not just surviving on Pyrrhus 7, they were beginning to thrive. Danny Rodriguez stood at the entrance to the newest greenhouse, watching families tend to their plants. Children played between the rows of vegetables while their parents worked. The air was cool and clean, filled with the smell of growing things instead of sulfur. You know what's funny? He said to Lisa Parker, who was checking the power systems. 6 months ago, we thought this planet was going to kill us. Now, I can't imagine living anywhere else. Lisa nodded, watching a group of children harvest vegetables that were twice the size of Earth normal. We're not the same people who landed here. This place has changed us. Maybe that's what we needed, Danny replied. Maybe we needed to be pushed to show what we're really capable of. Outside, the volcanoes continued to rumble and glow. The surface of Pyrrhus 7 was still a hostile wasteland. But underneath, in the growing network of greenhouses and tunnels, human civilization was taking root. They had learned to turn the planet's greatest threats into their greatest advantages. The lava world was becoming home. 6 months after the crash landing, the colony on Pyrrhus 7 had transformed beyond recognition. What had started as a desperate survival camp was now becoming something that amazed even the colonists themselves. The surface shelters were mostly gone, replaced by a growing network of underground spaces connected by the natural lava tube system. Carol Martinez stood at the entrance to the newest tunnel, her mining helmet casting light into the darkness ahead. Behind her, a team of workers carried equipment and supplies deeper into the planet's underground network. The tunnels were still hot, but they were manageable with the right protection. This one goes for almost 2 kilometers, she called back to her team. It connects to the main chamber where we're building the new greenhouse complex. The underground construction project had become the most ambitious thing the colonists had ever attempted. They were carving out living spaces, workshops, and massive greenhouse caverns from the volcanic rock. Each space was connected by the natural tunnel system, creating an underground city that stayed hidden from the planet's harsh surface. Rick Davis worked with a team of miners to expand one of the larger chambers. They used controlled explosions to break apart the volcanic rock, then shaped the space with tools made from salvaged ship parts. The rock was surprisingly easy to work with once they learned its properties. This chamber will hold 3 more. Greenhouses, Rick explained to Paul Stevens, who was inspecting the work. We can fit maybe 500 people down here comfortably, with room for workshops and storage. Paul nodded, impressed by the progress. The underground city was growing faster than anyone had expected. Families were moving into carved-out chambers that were cool and comfortable. Children played in underground playgrounds. While their parents worked in the growing network of tunnels, the greenhouse caverns were the real miracle. These were massive spaces carved from solid rock, each one designed to hold multiple growing areas. The geothermal cooling systems kept them at perfect temperatures for plant growth. The volcanic glass windows let in filtered sunlight while keeping out the heat. Dr. Kevin Walsh stood in the largest greenhouse cavern, surrounded by plants that defied belief. The tomatoes hung in heavy clusters, each one twice the size of Earth normal. The corn grew tall and thick, with ears that were packed with kernels. The leafy greens were so dense and nutritious that a single salad could feed a family. The mineral content in the soil is incredible, he explained to Dr. Susan Clark, who was taking samples for analysis. These plants are absorbing elements that barely exist on Earth. The nutritional value is off the charts. Susan nodded, studying her readings. The protein content alone is 300% higher than Earth normal. The vitamin levels are through the roof. We're not just growing food, we're growing superfood. The discovery had implications beyond just feeding the colony. The unique properties of the volcanic soil were creating plants with medical benefits. Some vegetables could help heal wounds faster. Others boosted the immune system. The colony was accidentally creating a pharmacy from their garden. Amy Thompson worked in the engineering workshop, a large cavern filled with workbenches and tools. She was designing new equipment using materials found on the planet. Volcanic glass could be shaped into precision instruments. Sulfur compounds could be processed into plastics and chemicals. Even the volcanic rock could be used to create concrete and building materials. We're becoming completely self-sufficient, she told Lisa Parker, who was reviewing the colony's resource inventory. We can make almost anything we need from planetary materials. Lisa smiled as she looked at the numbers. Food production is up 400%. We have more power than we can use. Housing is expanding faster than population growth. We're not just surviving anymore, we're thriving. The children had adapted to underground life with amazing speed. Alex Turner, now 11 years old, had become the unofficial inventor of the colony. He had figured out how to make light fixtures from volcanic glass and sulfur crystals. His workshop was filled with gadgets and tools that amazed the adults. Look at this, Alex said, showing Danny Rodriguez a device that looked like a small radio. It can detect gas leaks in the tunnels. I made it from parts of a broken tablet and some crystals I found. Danny examined the device with wonder. How does it work? The crystals react to different gases by changing color. I wired them to a speaker so it makes noise when there's danger. Now we can explore new tunnels safely. The boy's invention was immediately adopted by the mining teams. Soon, every tunnel exploration carried Alex's gas detectors. The children were contributing to the colony's survival in ways that surprised everyone. The underground city was becoming beautiful as well as functional. The volcanic glass windows created rainbow patterns when the sunlight hit them. The carved rock walls were decorated with murals made from colored minerals. Gardens grew in every available space, filling the tunnels with the smell of flowers and fresh air. Families had carved out comfortable homes in the rock chambers. Each home had its own small garden, workshop space, and living area. The children had decorated their rooms with sculptures made from volcanic glass. The adults had created community spaces where people could gather and socialize. The colony's success was about to be tested in a way no one expected. On a routine day, as the colonists worked in their underground paradise, sensors detected something approaching from space. A ship was entering orbit around PYR-Oz-7. Jake Morrison stood in the colony's new command center, a carved chamber filled with monitoring equipment. The approaching ship was unlike anything in their databases. It was sleek and metallic, with design features that suggested advanced technology. "It's scanning us," reported Ben Taylor, who was operating the communications equipment. "Multiple sensor sweeps. They're definitely looking for something. Can we communicate with them?" Jake asked. "Working on it," Ben replied. "I'm getting some kind of response. It's different, not human." The realization hit the colonists like a physical blow. They were not alone in the galaxy. And something had found them. The alien ship established orbit and began transmitting a signal. The message was complex, but the colony's computers were able to decode parts of it. The ship was from something called the Galactic Survey Corps. They were investigating reports of impossible activity on Pero 7. They want to send down a landing party, Ben announced. "They're asking for permission to visit our settlement." Jake looked around the command center at his fellow colonists. They had been so focused on survival that they had forgotten they might not be alone in the universe. Now they were about to make first contact with an alien species. "Tell them they're welcome," Jake decided, "but warn them about the surface conditions. They'll need protection." The alien landing party arrived in a shuttle that looked like a work of art. It was crewed by beings that the colonists had never imagined. They were tall and reptilian, with scaled skin that shimmered in the volcanic light. Their leader introduced himself as Survey Commander Zeth of the Zephyrian Republic. "We came to investigate reports of settlement activity," Zeth explained, his voice translated by a device that made it sound mechanical. "Our records indicate this planet is uninhabitable. Class 9 volcanic death world. No known species has ever successfully colonized such a place." Jake smiled and gestured toward the tunnel entrance. "Would you like to see what we've built?" The tour that followed left the alien visitors speechless. They walked through the underground city, past the thriving greenhouse caverns, through the workshops where humans created tools from volcanic materials. They watched children play in gardens that grew in impossible conditions. They ate food that was more nutritious than anything in their own worlds. "This is not possible," Zeth said, staring at a greenhouse where corn grew 3 meters tall. "No species in the galactic database could survive here, much less thrive." "Humans are stubborn," Jake replied. "We don't give up easily." The aliens spent 3 days documenting the colony. They took samples of the supercrops, studied the geothermal systems, and interviewed colonists about their techniques. They were especially interested in the children's inventions and adaptations. "Your species is remarkable," Zeth told the assembled colonists before leaving. "What you have accomplished here will be studied throughout the galaxy. You have turned a death world into a garden." As the alien ship departed, the colonists realized their lives had changed forever. They were no longer just survivors on a hostile planet. They were pioneers who had achieved something thought impossible. Word of their success would spread throughout the galaxy, bringing new challenges and opportunities. The underground city continued to grow, but now it grew with the knowledge that the galaxy was watching. The humans of Pero 7 had proven that no environment was too hostile, no challenge too great for human determination and creativity. They had turned their greatest obstacle into their greatest strength. Word of the human colony spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within weeks of the Zephyrian survey report, ships began arriving at Pero 7 from dozens of different worlds. The impossible had happened, and everyone wanted to see it for themselves. Helen Brooks stood in the colony's new diplomatic center, a beautifully carved chamber that served as a meeting place for visiting alien delegations. She had been a teacher before the crash, but now she found herself negotiating with species she had never imagined existed. "The Centauri Federation is offering 10,000 credits for a single bushel of your enhanced wheat," she told Paul Stevens, reviewing the latest trade proposals. "The Arcturus Medical Council wants exclusive rights to your healing vegetables. And the Vegan Agriculture Guild is asking for complete growing specifications." Paul shook his head in amazement. 6 months ago we were starving. Now we're sitting on the most valuable agricultural products in the galaxy. The colony's supercrops had become legendary throughout known space. The unique volcanic soil produced plants with properties that defied explanation. grains with perfect nutritional profiles that could feed entire populations, fruits that could cure diseases, vegetables that provided essential minerals found nowhere else in the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Walsh worked in his expanded laboratory, studying samples from the latest harvest. The plants continued to surprise him. Each generation seemed to adapt better to the volcanic environment, absorbing new minerals and developing new beneficial properties. "Look at this," he said to Dr. Susan Clark, holding up a sample of modified corn. "The protein chains are unlike anything in our databases. This single kernel contains more nutrition than a full meal on most worlds." Susan nodded, examining her own samples. "The medical applications are incredible. We've discovered compounds that can accelerate healing, boost immune systems, and even help with genetic disorders. We're not just growing food, we're growing medicine." The discovery had created a gold rush of sorts. Every day brought new visitors wanting to trade for the miraculous crops. The colonists found themselves wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. But they also found themselves in danger. Nick Patterson had emerged as the colony's unofficial trade coordinator. He was a natural businessman who understood the value of what they had created. He set up trading posts in the underground city and established relationships with merchant ships from across the galaxy. "We're not just selling crops," he explained. "To a group of colonists, we're selling hope. There are worlds out there that have been struggling to feed their populations for generations. Our plants could solve those problems." The humans shared their knowledge freely, teaching alien agricultural experts how to process volcanic soil and build geothermal growing systems. They welcomed researchers and students who wanted to learn from their techniques. The colony had become a center of learning and innovation, but not everyone was happy with human success. Reports reached the colony that the Dominion Empire, a militaristic alliance that controlled dozens of star systems, was not pleased with the sudden appearance of a human agricultural powerhouse. The Dominion had built their power on controlling food production and distribution. The human colony threatened that control. "They're calling us illegal squatters," Jake Morrison reported to the Colony Council. "They claim that all uninhabited worlds belong to the Dominion by right of conquest. They're demanding we abandon the planet and submit to their authority." The news sent a chill through the colony. The Dominion was known throughout the galaxy for their ruthless expansion and military might. They had conquered peaceful worlds and enslaved entire populations. No one had ever successfully resisted them. "What do we do?" asked Amy Thompson. "We can't fight a space empire. We don't have weapons or warships." "We have something better," said Carol Martinez, who had been quiet during the discussion. "We have this planet, and we know how to make it work for us." The Dominion's first demand came through official channels. A diplomatic message demanded that the humans cease all agricultural activities and prepare for evacuation. The colonists were given 30 days to comply or face military action. Jake read the message to the assembled colony in the main gathering chamber. Families sat together, holding their children close. These were people who had already lost everything once. They were not prepared to lose it again. "What do you want to do?" Jake asked the crowd. "We can try to negotiate, we can look for another world, or we can stay and fight." The response was immediate and unanimous. These colonists had built something incredible from nothing. They had turned a death world into a paradise. They would not give it up without a fight. "We stay," called out Rick Davis. "This is our home now. We fight," added Danny Rodriguez. "We've beaten this planet, we can beat them too." The vote was unanimous. The humans would resist the Dominion even though it seemed impossible. They began preparing for war in the only way they knew how, by using their creativity and determination to turn their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. Lisa Parker worked with Amy Thompson to modify the colony's geothermal systems. If they were going to fight, they needed to use every advantage the planet could give them. The volcanic activity that had once threatened to destroy them might be the key to their defense. "We can trigger controlled eruptions," Lisa explained, showing Amy the modified thermal controls. "Channel the lava flows. Create volcanic lightning storms. Turn the whole planet into a weapon. Amy stared at the plans with amazement. You want to weaponize the volcanoes? Why not? Lisa replied. They're already there. We just need to aim them. The children of the colony had grown up with the planet's dangers and had learned to work with them in ways adults couldn't imagine. Alex Turner, now 12 years old, had become the colony's expert on volcanic glass and sulfur chemistry. He was working on something that might change everything. I can make the glass explode, he told Danny Rodriguez, showing him a small demonstration. When it heats up really fast, it shatters into tiny sharp pieces, like a bomb made of glass. Danny watched the demonstration with growing excitement. Alex, you might have just invented a new kind of weapon. The boy's discovery led to the development of volcanic glass grenades that could be triggered by rapid heating. The colonists began manufacturing them in secret, along with other weapons made from planetary materials. They were preparing for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Meanwhile, the underground city continued to expand. New chambers were carved out and connected to the tunnel network. The colonists were building not just for defense, but for survival. If the Dominion came, they would find an enemy that could disappear into the planet itself. The greenhouse caverns were expanded and fortified. Food production was increased to support a longer siege. Workshops were converted to manufacture weapons and defensive equipment. The entire colony was becoming a fortress hidden beneath the volcanic surface. As the 30-day deadline approached, more alien ships arrived at Piro 7. Some came to evacuate their citizens who had been trading with the humans. Others came to observe what everyone expected to be a massacre. A few came to offer support, though they were careful not to openly defy the Dominion. Commander Zeth of the Zephyrian Republic sent a private message to Jake Morrison. We cannot openly support you against the Dominion, the message said. But we admire your courage. The galaxy is watching. If you can somehow survive this, everything will change. The message gave Jake hope. They were not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for every small world that had been bullied by the Dominion. They were fighting for the right to exist independently in a galaxy dominated by military empires. On the final day of the ultimatum, the Dominion fleet arrived. 24 warships dropped out of hyperspace and took up positions around Piro 7. They were massive vessels, bristling with weapons and carrying thousands of soldiers. Against them, the humans had volcanic glass bombs and modified farming equipment. The final message from the Dominion was brief and brutal. Surrender now or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply. Jake stood in the command center, surrounded by his fellow colonists. They had come so far from the desperate survivors who had crashed on this world. They had built something beautiful and impossible. Now they would defend it with everything they had. Send them our answer, Jake told Ben Taylor. The response was simple. This is our world. Come and take it. The war for Piro 7 was about to begin. The Dominion fleet hung in space above Piro 7 like angry storm clouds. Admiral Crix commanded the lead battleship from his bridge, studying the readings from the planet below. The volcanic world glowed red through his viewscreen, looking exactly like the death world his databases described. Sensors show no surface installations, reported his tactical officer. No defensive weapons, no military infrastructure. These humans are completely defenseless. Admiral Crix nodded with satisfaction. This would be an easy conquest. The humans had 30 minutes left to surrender, but he doubted they would be foolish enough to resist. No one fought the Dominion and survived. On the planet's surface, Jake Morrison stood in the colony's command center, watching the alien fleet through their own sensors. The underground chamber was filled with colonists at their positions, ready to defend their home with everything they had built. All teams report ready, announced Lisa Parker, her hands moving over the controls that connected to every volcanic system on the planet. Geothermal charges are in position. Thermal triggers are online. We can turn this entire world into a weapon. Jake nodded and opened a communication channel to the fleet above. This is Captain Morrison of the Piro 7 colony. We reject your ultimatum. This world belongs to us. We will defend it, Admiral Crix laughed when he heard the human response. They want to fight us with farming equipment. Very well. Begin orbital bombardment. Destroy their settlements. The Dominion ships opened fire with massive energy weapons, sending beams of destructive force toward the planet's surface. The beams struck the volcanic rock with tremendous impact, creating explosions that could be seen from space. But something unexpected happened. Instead of destroying the human colony, the bombardment triggered massive volcanic eruptions. The energy weapons had hit precisely placed thermal charges that the humans had buried in unstable volcanic vents. Columns of lava shot into the sky, followed by clouds of superheated gas and volcanic lightning. The planet's surface became a storm of fire and electricity that reached up toward the orbiting ships. What's happening? Admiral Crix demanded as his ship rocked from electromagnetic interference. The volcanic activity is off the charts, his science officer reported. The bombardment is triggering planet-wide eruptions. The electromagnetic storms are interfering with our weapon systems. Deep underground, the human colonists watched their plan unfold with amazement. Carol Martinez had spent weeks placing thermal charges in unstable volcanic formations. When the Dominion weapons hit them, they created a chain reaction that turned the entire planet into an active battlefield. Phase 2, Jake ordered. Amy Thompson activated the modified geothermal systems throughout the underground network. Instead of cooling the air, the systems began superheating volcanic glass chambers that had been built into the tunnel walls. The glass exploded outward with tremendous force, creating volcanic glass projectiles that shot toward the surface. The glass shards, accelerated by geothermal pressure, burst from hidden vents all across the planet's surface. They flew into space like glittering bullets, striking the Dominion ships with pinpoint accuracy. The volcanic glass was harder than steel and moved faster than most projectiles. "We are taking damage," reported the tactical officer aboard the lead battleship. "The planet is shooting at us with some kind of glass projectiles. Our shields are holding, but barely." Admiral Crix stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The planet itself was fighting back every time his ships fired. At the surface, more volcanoes erupted. Every attempt to land troops was met with volcanic lightning and glass projectiles. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Planets don't fight back." In the underground command center, Alex Turner worked at a control station he had built himself. The teenage genius had spent months learning to predict volcanic activity by watching gas emissions and ground vibrations. Now he was using that knowledge to aim the planet's natural weapons. "Volcano 7 is ready to blow," he announced. "I can trigger it when the big ship moves into position." "Do it," Jake ordered. Alex pressed a series of controls that triggered carefully placed charges in a massive volcanic vent. The explosion that followed sent a column of lava and gas 20 kilometers into the sky, directly into the path of the Dominion flagship. The battleship tried to maneuver away, but the volcanic eruption created an electromagnetic storm that interfered with their engines. Lightning arced between the ship's hull and the volcanic gases, overloading their electrical systems. "All systems failing," reported the flagship's engineer. "The electromagnetic interference is shutting down our computers." Admiral Crix watched, his mighty fleet being destroyed by a planet that should have been defenseless. His ships were designed to fight other spacecraft, not volcanoes and glass projectiles. The humans had turned their greatest weakness into their ultimate weapon. "Fall back to a higher orbit," he ordered. "We need to get out of range of those eruptions." But the humans weren't finished. Danny Rodriguez had been working on the ultimate modification to their geothermal systems. He had found a way to focus the planet's thermal energy into concentrated beams that could reach into space. "Thermal cannons are ready," he reported. "We can shoot concentrated heat beams at the ships." The thermal cannons were Alex Turner's most ambitious invention. They used the planet's volcanic energy to create focused beams of superheated gas and plasma. The beams could melt through ship armor and disable electronic systems from thousands of kilometers away. The first thermal cannon fired with a sound like thunder. A beam of concentrated heat and energy shot from a hidden vent on the planet's surface, striking a Dominion destroyer. The ship's armor began to glow and melt as the thermal beam cut through it like a knife through butter. "They're melting our ships," the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with panic. "The heat beams are cutting through our armor." "Admiral." Crix realized he was facing an enemy unlike any in Dominion history. These humans had turned an entire planet into a fortress. Every volcano was a cannon. Every eruption was a weapon. The very ground was fighting against his fleet. "Full retreat," he ordered. "All ships withdraw from the system immediately." But it was too late for some of his vessels. 3 destroyers had been disabled by thermal cannons. 2 cruisers were caught in volcanic lightning storms that fried their electronics. The flagship itself was damaged and limping away from the planet's deadly embrace. In the underground command center, the colonists watched the Dominion fleet retreat with a mixture of joy and disbelief. They had done the impossible. They had defeated one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces using nothing but volcanic glass, thermal energy, and human creativity. "We won," whispered Amy Thompson, staring at the sensor display showing the retreating ships. "We actually won," Jake confirmed, though he could hardly believe it himself. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than the Dominion fleet could return to their home base. The impossible had happened again. Not only had humans colonized a death world, they had used it to defeat a military empire. Within days, ships began arriving from across the galaxy, not to trade or observe, but to celebrate. The human victory had inspired every small world and peaceful species that had been bullied by the Dominion. For the first time in generations, someone had stood up to the Empire and won. Commander Zeth of the Zephyrin Republic was among the first to arrive. "What you have accomplished here will be remembered forever," he told Jake Morrison. "You have shown that determination and creativity can overcome superior firepower. The victory changed everything." The Dominion's reputation for invincibility was shattered. Across the galaxy, oppressed worlds began to resist. The human colony on Pyro 7 became a symbol of hope and defiance. The underground city continued to grow, now expanded to accommodate visitors from across the galaxy who came to study human techniques and learn from their example. The greenhouse caverns produced food that fed not just the colony, but hungry worlds throughout. Known Space. Alex Turner, now recognized as one of the galaxy's youngest military geniuses, established a school where young beings from different species could learn to work with hostile environments instead of against them. The techniques developed on Pyro 7 were being used to colonize worlds that had been considered impossible to settle. The lava world that should have been humanity's grave had become their greatest triumph. The colonists who had crashed on Pyro 7 as desperate refugees were now leaders of a galactic movement. They had proven that no environment was too harsh, no enemy too powerful, and no challenge too great for human determination. Standing in the main greenhouse cavern, surrounded by plants that grew in impossible conditions and children who played games with volcanic glass, Jake Morrison reflected on their incredible journey. They had come to this world with nothing but hope and determination. They were leaving their mark on the entire galaxy. The humans of Pyro 7 had shown the universe what was possible when creativity met necessity. Their story would inspire countless others to attempt the impossible, to turn obstacles into opportunities, and to never give up in the face of overwhelming odds. The lava planet burned bright in space, no longer a world of death, but a beacon of human achievement that could be seen across the stars.